Hello and welcome to Movies That Move Me. I'm Elijah Winfrey. I'm a writer and director, and I made this video series so that we can have a continuous dialogue about movies and so that folks who watch my films might be able to understand a little more about where some of my inspiration came from and why I got into being a writer and director in the first place. Okay? And I feel like that has a lot to do with the movies I watched growing up as a kid and the movies that I've now continued to watch as an adult. So, with this movie that I'm about to pull up, it is a Batman film. It is my favorite Batman film. If you know me personally, you already know what movie this is going to be. Okay? If you don't know me personally, well, here we go. Okay? This movie is from 1995. It is my favorite Batman movie. There has never been another Batman movie like it, in my opinion. It is Batman Forever. This is my favorite Batman. And partially because it's got the Riddler in it. The Riddler is my favorite villain. I've always found him to be the most interesting Batman villain out there and one of the more dangerous Batman villains, depending on what the storyline is set up to look like. And in this film, I feel like he was portrayed very good by Jim Carrey. I really enjoyed his performance as the Riddler. It was very similar to the Frank Gorshin performance in the original Batman television series. And a lot of people don't get that because they watch this movie and they go, well, he's just being Jim Carrey from the 90s. Which, first of all, Jim Carrey from the 90s is awesome. Jim Carrey anytime is awesome. But a lot of people say, well, he's just doing the same thing he did in The Mask. No. Go and watch the original Batman television show. Watch Frank Gorshin as the Riddler, and then go watch Jim Carrey as the Riddler. You'll see that he did very meticulously pick out certain things that he could do that would elevate his performance, but also pay homage to what Frank Gorshin did. Okay? So I feel like the Riddler was great in this film. I feel like Tommy Lee Jones did the best he could, and I say that not to sound disrespectful, but there was a lot of Tommy Lee Jones' performance that was left on the cutting room floor, as was a lot of these characters, unfortunately, because when Warner Brothers hired Joel Schumacher wanted to do a dark, gritty Batman where we were discussing the psychology behind what makes Bruce Wayne and what makes Batman Batman. And Warner Brothers, after they saw what Joel Schumacher turned into them, said, no, we don't want to do that. We are going to make it lighter. We're going to make it funner. And that sort of thing. We want to make it more tailored to the kids. And so it was kind of like a miscommunication. And that's like the nicest way to say it. It was a miscommunication. The expectations were not set out clearly from the jump. That's the business way of putting that. And I'll do another video at some point to describe all the things that went wrong with it, but that's not what this video is about. This video is about the inspiration that I took from this film. So here's what I liked about it, okay? And here's the inspiration that I take to try to use in my movies. I love the way the villains pop in this film. Their costumes make them interesting. The fact that they're kind of a little over the top makes them interesting. The fact that their backstories are so rich makes them interesting to me. I've always loved that about Batman. Regardless of who's directing the movie, I've always loved the villains because the villains have such great backstories. And so I try to do that with all of my villains that I write. In fact, when I did Ballad of Billy Badass, my first film, there was like 12 pages, 12 to 15 pages before the first page of the script. And that's because those 12 to 15 pages were all backstory, which the audience never sees, but I wanted my performers to have it so they knew exactly what I wanted from those characters prior to page one where the audience meets them. Because I feel like that would be helpful. It was helpful to me. I played one of the villains in it in Johnny Love. And if you go watch that performance, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about, where I try to make the costumes look appealing and interesting instead of just, oh, it's so simple. He's the bad guy, he's the good guy, that's it. Okay? I try to make my characters pop like they did in this film. Another thing that I take inspiration from was the marketing campaign for this movie. It was everywhere. Okay? It was everywhere. And a lot of times, what I'll do is I'll go back and I will look at the videos that Warner Brothers used to send to video stores about why they should have this movie in their store. Okay, which think about that for a second. You have to convince a video rental store to have a Batman movie in it. They probably didn't need to, but they wanted to show you exactly why you should have that big Batman display in your store. Okay? And so I'll watch that because it helps me realize, how do I need to promote my films? Because I always try to make my films feel like a big budget feature, even though they are independent films. Instead of going at it and saying, well, we did our best on a low budget, hopefully you enjoy it. I don't want to do that because my actors and performers gave me a big budget performance. They deserve to have a big budget marketing campaign, as big as I can, okay? And so I look at this for ideas. And one of the ideas that I took from this was actually the soundtrack. The soundtrack for this film is really, really fun. Obviously, a lot of folks know Seal did a song on this. Kiss from a Rose. You also had U2 with their song on it, and there was many other songs too on that soundtrack. In fact, the soundtrack is like 15 songs long, and only 5 of them were actually in the film. But they had a lot of fun with that soundtrack, and so because it was something that was done with Batman Forever, I have done that now with my films. Billy Badass has a 7-song soundtrack. Captain Corpse is going to have an 8-song soundtrack. And again, that's all about trying to make it look more appealing and having more things to sell of my film to the public, to you guys, you know. And again, I'm just being honest with you. You know, I am trying to sell things for my movies, so as any good business person would do. But the marketing campaign for this movie is hugely inspirational to me. Because I want to make sure there's cool stuff out there so that years from now when I'm looking back on it, I can go, yeah, I have the Captain Corpse soundtrack, or I have the Billy Badass soundtrack, or the shirts and things like that. So I found that to be hugely inspirational to me. The other thing is like the artwork. You'll notice that a lot of my posters featured more than one character on it, because this one did. So again, I take a lot of the things from the inspiration as far as that's concerned. Obviously making the villains pop, making them interesting, and then the colors that are in the film, I try to do that as well in my movies. So all those things I find is inspirational. And just this movie, like I said, it holds a very special place in my heart. There's so much I could say about it, but I'm restraining myself here so that I don't go off track with this video. But those are some of the inspirational things. Val Kilmer is my favorite Batman of all time. Second place to me right now is Robert Pattinson. And I say right now because they're always making a new Batman movie. But I would encourage you, and this is the one thing I will say before I end this video. If you've never seen Batman Forever, watch it. If you've seen Batman Forever, and even if you haven't, go and read the book. The book is made by Peter David. It was a novel that came out, I believe, shortly before or shortly after this movie came out in theaters. And that novel is actually written using the production script. Now, if you're not familiar with that process, here's the brief thing with that. When a novel is made about a movie, okay, not a movie made about a novel made about a movie, they usually will hand the author the shooting script. And they'll say, make your novel based off this. But then production happens, and that shooting script goes through changes as they are making the movie. And so you end up getting bits and pieces, bits and pieces that were not in the film, that make the film make more sense or change your viewing of the film. I have that book for Batman and Forever. Batman Forever, not Batman and Forever. And that did change my mindset quite a bit. I already loved the movie, but that book shows you everything they were trying to do. Read it. I think you'll like the movie even more once you do. Okay, so this is kind of a book and movie recommendation, if you will. But I love this movie. It's a movie that moved me. And again, Joel Schumacher, one of my favorite directors. And unfortunately, a lot of people just look at him and they say, oh, Batman and Robin. And those people are hard to convince. But what I will say is, don't judge him based off one movie. Watch this movie. Watch some of his other stuff. You'll see merit in it because he was a really good director. And I hope someday we get to see his cut of this film. But this is a movie that moved me. Batman Forever. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much.